we're going to begin with that showdown in Corvallis. A little bit wet, not windy, but awfully wet. And it is the Huskies winning 22-20 at Oregon State. At one point, it seemed like the Huskies defense was on the field for, I don't know what, the entire third quarter?
It's like a 10-minute drive.
Yeah. So. I mean, because that's the play in those conditions when you are Oregon State's offense is to, just like we said, limit the number of times that Michael Penix touches the ball, lean on an offensive line that is excellent, a running back in Damian Martinez who is very, very good, and yet you're still only held to 20 points. To me, the headline out of this one, Tom, I'll throw to you first, but like the headline out of this one is questions answered. You know, like they showed they could go against a really good team in some adverse conditions when you're not just going to be able to chuck it all over the yard, because it was not a accurate, you know, I don't want to criticize Penix individually. I don't want to make apologies. I thought Oregon State's defense did a good job, but you know, Penix did not produce up to his season averages or standards anywhere close to it. And you were still able to win when you are an undefeated team and it's November 18th. That to me is impressive.
To be fair to Michael Penix, to be critical of the stat broadcast box score, the stat broadcast box score only has Washington listed for 2 drops. Buddy, there were a lot more than 2 drops in that game on both sides.
4, right?
Oh, there were like 55 drops. Are you kidding me? When the rain really started coming down, everybody was dropping everything. Yeah, like this is a Washington team that we have seen kind of go through it all year. They came out really, really hot, blowing people out. Then there was the flu or whatever that went through the team, and they struggled and they gutted it out and they got wins, even though they weren't playing pretty. And then, you know, like you get to a game like this, like the last few weeks, like this is a gauntlet part of their schedule, going from Utah to USC and now on the road to Oregon State. Like that's a really difficult stretch of games. And they kind of, as we talked about, like when the 3 smart ones on the show took the under in this game, the non-traitorous ones of us, like we mentioned how like this is a Washington team that the last few weeks has kind of been changing its identity on offense, has been leaning more and more on the run game, and that came in handy again tonight. Like Dylan Johnson didn't have the same kind of overall performance he's had the last few weeks, but he did finish with 89 yards on 16 carries. He got some key first downs for him, helped him move the chains. And then Roma Dunze had the only guy who could catch out there tonight, 7 catches for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. So like to see them kind of change their identity on offense, to find different ways to win, to find different ways to score. And then on the defensive side of the ball, get stops. Like obviously the rain and the weather tonight played a big role in how this, you know, in both defenses getting stops. Like if this was perfect weather, it's probably not a 22-20 game. But still, to see the Huskies playing well on defense in a game like this on the road when they absolutely need it, I mean, this is a team that, you know, I still think assuming they all get there, I still think Oregon probably wins the rematch, but they're showing themselves they're capable of winning in a lot of different ways. They don't have to play. You see a lot of teams, it's like they play one way, and if you force them to play a different way, they've got no idea what to do. This team can play a lot of different ways. They can win a lot of different fights.
I think Tom nailed it there. Honestly, like Washington, that was gutty,
right?
Like you had to go play Oregon State on Oregon State's turf on Oregon State's terms. Like normally, a little bit of rain actually favors scoring. That much rain does not favor scoring, right? Like that like materially impacts the flight of the ball. I was like, oh, okay, we are in trouble here, boys. This is not getting to the over here, right? You know, you see it rain, okay, cool. And then it's like, oh, we got that level of rain. This is not going to work. But what also didn't work was Oregon State's red zone offense. And the broadcast had noted they had been number 1 in points per trip to the red zone, I believe, right? Or maybe just how often they scored.
Definitely.
I don't really care. Yeah, like I don't really care how often you score. I care how often you score touchdowns. And in 4 trips in the red zone, the Beavers had 1 touchdown. Now, part of that was their offense. Part of that was Washington standing up. And standing up, honestly, guys, like without a lot of their better players. I mean, they're all like, hey, this good D lineman's on the sideline, and this one's on the sideline, and their stud middle linebacker's out, and they got a safety out, and this guy went down. And And like you just had different guys stepping up for Washington all the time. And like that's the mark of a good team. They can throw multiple pitches, right? Okay, maybe the curveball's not working tonight. We got to rely on the changeup, and they got it done. Like that was a really impressive thing for me to see. Like they keep winning, and the championship game's in Vegas, right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, guess what? Probably not going to have a whole lot of rain inside that dome. So if Washington can handle the Apple Cup next week, which Washington State looked fairly decent, guys, I mean, you're not going to have to play any more of those rain ball games, most likely the rest of the way. So they're kind of one game away from being able to play on a fast turf. Like this is going to be, it's going to be interesting. But like it's winning ball games ain't easy. It's hard to do, and they just keep doing it.
It's really hard to win at Reser Stadium too. Like they don't lose there.
To your point, Tom, the gauntlet has been USC, Utah, and Oregon State back to back to back. Those results, 52-42 against USC, 35-28 against Utah, 22-20 against Oregon State. Man, it's been sweaty, but they have come out on the right side of it. And there's a lot of conversations about who's going to be this year's TCU, and maybe it's because they got daggum purple. But you know what? Washington seems to be having that kind of TCU late November flavor of win in different ways. TCU had that late low scoring win against Texas on the way to being in the Big 12 title game. We'll see how that ends up helping or hurting them as they go into, as you mentioned, the Apple Cup. Apple Cup will be in Seattle. That game is going to be next Saturday, 4 p.m. kickoff. And I wasn't planning to spend a lot of time on Dan Lanning disrespecting the man who he was the best man for. But Bud, do you agree with Tom's notion that going up against Oregon again in the Pac-12 championship game, even in the wake of this, and look, we were like, Huskies, here are your flowers. You answered all these questions. You're showing us the signs of a championship team. But are you still taking Oregon?
Well, I bet Oregon the first time. I really don't think that there's much reason to dissuade myself of that opinion. Yeah, I'll probably take Oregon again. But look, like there is kind of the element of like Oregon is a really good team, but when they're not challenged up front, they can kind of do whatever they want, and Nix doesn't make mistakes. Not a lot of teams have made Oregon do difficult things this year. And I'm not saying that Washington can do that, but they did do that a little bit in the first game. Like Muhammad for UW is a pretty good corner. So, like, can he stick with Franklin? I don't know. Like Oregon to me looks like a better team. It looks like they're improving a little more than Washington is, but they're both like really good teams. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion.
If you want to allege bum slayer, it ain't for the Huskies.
No.
That would be more like if we're going to put that tag on one of the two of them between Washington and Oregon, it would be on Oregon because they just absolutely crush teams that they are better than. So we'll continue to track that moving forward. Again, huge win for Washington. So use that. We're going to get into more just sort of big picture ranking stuff in tomorrow's top 25 today in a little bit, but I am projecting that Washington will take over the number 4 spot.